Hello, this is Kenneth Colin. I want to show you how to do something today with the R9 controller. I have a customer who has a special requirement. He wants to send out a TTL pulse out of his DAC1 with a 5-volt amplitude after each scan pixel in an image frame. He wants the pulse to have a configurable width, and he wants the pulse to have a configurable delay after it. So I'm going to record this little video to show how easy it is to make these changes. First, we're going to modify his IHDL hardware space. I'm going to include DAC1 because that's where the pulse will come from. I'm going to base this procedure off the pixel scan because that already stops at every pixel in the image, and all we need to do is modify this. So first, we're going to make a copy of this procedure so we don't modify the original. We can hit Control A to select all, Control C to copy. I'll go New Procedure Space, and I'll press Control V to paste. We can call this Scan with Trigger, and we will make this a scan procedure. This way it will show up on our scan area window. Okay, so we're going to add this TTL pulse after the image pixel is sampled, which is done right here inside of these inner loops. This is the forward direction. It'll sample and then move the next pixel, sample, move to the next pixel, and when it's done, it will do the same thing in the reverse direction. Or, if the user happens to have record one direction enabled, it will do a solid sweep back from the end of the scan line to the beginning of the scan line before moving down, but it won't stop at each pixel. So first thing we need to do is make a little bit of room here. Pardon the mess, I'll just make it real messy to start, and I'll clean it up later. Okay, so everything we're going to add is going to be here. And also here. So after we've sampled the image pixel, we want to have a pulse coming from DAC1. We'll call this DAC1 up. We'll select DAC1 from the list. Oh, that's right. In his file, he had it called something else. I'll just show you real quick here, and I'll rename it just to make it easy for the example. So here, DAC1 is called tip bias. I'll just come back and call it DAC1. Okay, now in this list I should have a DAC1. Here we go. So we want to activate the output voltage. You can't see this right now because it's off my screen, but I'm only adding output voltage. And here we can say 5 volts. Next, we want to have a configurable delay. And we'll call this trigger length. And we'll configure the delay in a minute. We're going to make this a part of a dashboard panel. So you can just change it from the dashboard in one place and it will change it inside the procedure for you. So similarly, here we have DAC1 up. I'm just going to use Control-C to copy. Now I'm selecting this loop, so when I Control-V to paste, it puts it inside the loop. See how I can't drag it outside? And this is called DAC1 up still, so I'm going to put it to 0 volts and call it DAC down. I see I need just a little bit more space here to fit another activate item. And by the way, you might see that I'm selecting multiple things at a time. I'm holding Control when I do that. Okay, we'll add another delay here. And we'll call this trigger, we'll call it trigger delay. Okay. So now I'll expand this other one here too to make room. All right. So I want to have 2 configurable delays on this procedure panel. So what I can do, if I select trigger length, now I'll press this little arrow next to the period in the properties, and I'll say add to procedure panel. Same thing here, trigger delay, period, add to procedure panel. Now if I select the background, I select panel, and now I have these 2 things that show up, period. Well, what I can do, I click here, the checkbox next to it, I click modify. Now you'll see the name is period. We'll call this trigger length. And now we will hit update. And similarly, we'll hit period 1, modify, and we'll call it trigger delay. And update. So now, if I select this trigger length, we can select the arrow next to the period and say reference. Now the name of the reference, you'll see here we have things scan processor, arrow, Z offset, for example. We want to find the one called scan with trigger. It'll have an arrow, and it will be called trigger length, because that's what we named the control. Here we go, scan with trigger, trigger length. Same thing, for trigger delay, we want to select reference. It was all the way at the bottom, trigger delay. All right, now I'm going to select DAC1 up, trigger length, DAC1 down, and trigger delay by holding Control. I'll hit Control-C for copy. I'll select this loop below it, Control-V to paste. And again, I'll make sure it's actually inside the loop. And I'll connect this up. And as we see, it still copied these references for us. Trigger length, and scan with trigger, trigger delay. Now if we just select in the background, we can hit this validate button to see if what I did was valid. And we get a green mark. That means whatever we did, it's a good change. If we made some mistake while we were doing this, let's say we forgot to connect something or we had it wired wrong, if we hit validate, it turns red. And you can generally go to this output tab and it'll tell you what's wrong. So here at the bottom it says validating procedure, scan with trigger, loop, lines per frame contains more than one first level item. Well, if we look, that one loop was called lines per frame. A first level item means something with a pin disconnected. Well, that would be this. So we can delete it, validate, look, it's green again. So now if we go back to the dashboard, we'll have a new control panel called Scan with Trigger. So now if we want a trigger length of 2 milliseconds, and after the trigger we want a 100 millisecond delay, that's all we have to do. And inside the procedure, you'll see when I select trigger length, it says scan with trigger, trigger length 2 milliseconds, and the trigger delay is 100 milliseconds, just like we said on that panel. And since we gave that procedure the type of scan, it will now appear here, scan with trigger. So that's all you have to do in order to add a TTL trigger pulse at 5 volts from the DAC1 after the image pixel is sampled in a pixel-by-pixel scan mode. If you have any questions, please contact me, Kenneth Colin, at support@rhk-tech.com. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.